Welcome back here to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk now about the Pittsburgh Steelers. What is going on in Pittsburgh in regards to their offense? Obviously, their offense went through a major change this offseason. New offensive coordinator, some additions to the offensive line, wide receiver, quarterback. Everything is changing in Pittsburgh, and one of the biggest changes was Diontae Johnson. Arguably their best receiver, at least at the start of last season in 2023. He was traded to the Carolina Panthers for Diontae Johnson, and I want to say an additional pick, a late-round draft pick, heading towards the Carolina Panthers as well. But that put this receiver room specifically into question, with a lot of people now believing that the talent just isn't there for this room. It's definitely lacking, not having Diontae Johnson there, really just having George Pickens there for most people to identify. Most people, you ask, who's the Steelers wide receiver? They'll say George Pickens, and then it's hard to name anybody else because after that, it's not bad players, but just players you wouldn't think of right off the top of your head. Behind George Pickens, you have Van Jefferson, a Super Bowl winning receiver at that with the Rams, Calvin Austin III, Roman Wilson, a rookie this year, Scotty Miller, another Super Bowl champion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but again, not a name that just jumps out at you right off the top of your head. And also, if you want to add Pat Freiermuth in there as a pass catcher, he should be a bigger weapon with Arthur Smith heading this offense now as the offensive coordinator. But Freiermuth and George Pickens are really the names that jump out at you there as names that you've probably heard of before, at least if you're a casual NFL fan. You follow the NFL pretty regularly. It's hard to name all these other guys as to why people want or think that the Steelers should add a receiver to their room right now. Mostly also because Brandon Ayuk has been linked, adding Mike Tomlin on Twitter a few months ago, stirring up all the rumors. So that would be ideal. They've also been linked to Deebo Samuel during the draft, Cortland Sutton, Tyler Boyd in free agency. It's something that they've wanted to address, it seems, but haven't, gotten over the line up until that point. But also then you have last week's comments from Omar Khan, a relaxed view on this receiver room, not too urgent about adding anything, it seems. He seems pretty at ease with this room was. He said he felt comfortable with it, and that if an opportunity does present itself, they'd, go further with that, but they're not too stressed about it, it seems, at this moment. And neither is George Pickens, really. George Pickens last Friday, they asked him about it, needing outside help in this wide receiver room, and all he said on adding some receiver help through trades or anything like that, he said, nah, I think we're good enough in that wide receiver room, keeping it nice and simple for everybody, confident in Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, himself obviously, Roman Wilson and Scotty Miller up until now. And it is a puzzling take on it, not too surprising from George. If you know his personality or anything like that, you've seen it through his play and just some of the things he does off of the field. Not too surprised with what he said. He's a pretty confident receiver, as all receivers are, but it is just puzzling, like I said, because this offense, if you caught any Steelers game last year, not ideal for anybody wanting to watch good football, honestly. But the offense was pretty much a mess. It was a miracle that they made the playoffs with Kenny Pickett in there at quarterback. Not all on him, but, just getting hurt, going in and out of the lineup. Then you had Mitchell Trubisky. That didn't work at all. Mason Rudolph comes in. You find a little bit of momentum there. You roll into the playoffs, but not really the biggest shot against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Then also, you fire your offensive coordinator halfway through the year. Now you have two guys really running the offense, which not ideal, honestly, at that point in time. The quarterback problems, like I mentioned, plus everybody just scrambling, it feels like, trying to figure out this new offense, trying to fit in somewhere and find their role. Again, miracle that they made the playoffs, but that just seems to be what they are now at this point, the Steelers being good enough to get in, but the biggest problem with them is trying to get a win in the playoffs now. I think it's been since 2016 or 2017, around then, that they haven't gotten a playoff win, so obviously that needs to change for the Steelers and who this organization is, legacy-wise, right, reputation-wise. They can't just be in the playoffs and then just get bounced first round. That criticism, that talk around that has been getting louder and louder each passing season. And people believe that the wide receiver position needs to be something that they have to address to really be considered one of these teams like the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Ravens, all these teams, the Texans now, an excess of talent at receivers. The Steelers just don't have that. But really, I don't think it's too much on the receivers right now, just based on where this team is and how this team is built. Really, what I think is more of a priority, to answer the question on the screen there, I think it has to be the quarterback up until this point, for me, just because I don't have to explain why the quarterback is so important to everybody. That's pretty self-explanatory, but just because of the way that this offense is built, really built through the run, and who Arthur Smith is, the most successful part of that Atlanta Falcons offense was the running game. With Tyler Algier, with Bijan Robinson, you have as good of a running back duo, if not better, in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren here in Pittsburgh. So really, I don't think this Arthur Smith offense would really benefit from having, I'll use the Falcons as an example again, like Drake London and Kyle Pitts on the outside, because those guys really didn't get used enough. And I know the quarterback play wasn't great in Atlanta, but now you have better quarterback play to maybe have better success there, but the wide receivers are a little bit worse, but still, you have this running game here that you could really use to your full advantage like you wanted to, like you did in Atlanta. So the fact that they went out and got Arthur Smith, to me, is screaming that they want to build this up through the run, be run heavy as much as possible, run it as much as possible with Najee Harris. Once he gets tired, bring in Jaylen Warren, same thing. Once he gets tired, bring back Najee. I think they want to do that more to sort of take the pressure off of these two quarterbacks coming in, which I believe are worlds better than the situation that they had last year, but not the most ideal. You look at Justin Fields coming from a situation with the Chicago Bears, drafted there, not too much success there. The Bears didn't really do too much to build around him and support him. They did right by him by trading him to somewhere where he wanted to go. And with Russell Wilson, that whole disaster in Denver, looking better in that last year, production-wise, stats-wise, and everything like that. But it doesn't give you the most confidence now for anybody to pick one of these guys and confidently say that they're going to be a good quarterback with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So with that being the case, and who Arthur Smith is, and what I believe this offense is going to be in 2024, I think building up through the run, taking off some of the pressure on those quarterbacks to not have too many eyeballs looking at them at the start to determine whether the Steelers lose or win. Building through this run, having this be the primary source of success for the Steelers, not only will take the pressure off the quarterbacks, like I mentioned, whoever it is, Fields or Russell Wilson at the start of the season, it'll take off the pressure off of those guys, and then that way the defense loads the box a little bit more, they crowd the line of scrimmage, and it makes it easier for the receivers on the outside because they're not bums or, awful at receiving. Obviously, the guys that they have there, they're solid pieces, but to consistently get open, beat double coverage or something like that, have opposing defenses know you're going to pass it, and expect Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin to always get open, I don't think that suits the Steelers. I think they were that once with Big Ben, AB, Le'Veon Bell, but now it's a little bit different. They want to build up through the run. They want to run the ball more and more, get the opposing defense tired, and in that way, the receivers have more of an opportunity to face one-on-one coverage. And I think at that point, in those scenarios, this receiver room looks a bit more promising, or can look a bit more impressive if they're not trying to beat zone coverages or double coverages to George Pickens. If you have the defense focusing on the run game that way, I think it's more important to figure that out, figure out who the quarterback is, instead of figuring out who your receivers are, because I don't think that's the identity of this team anymore. Since they had Big Ben, maybe it was back then, but now, different identity. To me, it goes running game, figuring out the offensive line, running backs, how you're going to split the carries or something like that. Then quarterback, who's going to, command this offense, lead this offense the best way possible. And then you start looking at wide receiver, because I think these guys, really for the situation you face at the start of this season, trading Diontae Johnson, to bring back Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, who I'm really high on. Pat Freiermuth is going to be a big weapon, I'm sure, under Arthur Smith. I don't think that's the worst scenario where you have to hit the red button and panic to find anybody to come in. Right now, where the talent stands in terms of receiver, if you're not trading for Brandon Ayuk, I believe bringing in anybody else really doesn't improve this team that much. So they're stuck right now, or almost it seems like, unless, like I said, they could trade for Brandon Ayuk, but it seems highly unlikely at this point. To me, all this attention on the Steelers wide receivers like George Pickens, I'm not too worried about it. I think they have other things to address before they get to figuring out who else they can have there as a 1A or 1B to George Pickens. But that's just me. I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you guys think the Steelers absolutely need another wide receiver, or do you think they'll do fine with running the ball a lot with Najee and Warren, and they're going to do all right with Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, and Calvin Austin? Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments section. But that'll wrap it up for that segment. We have one more thing to talk about on today's show. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, talking about his starting quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Limiting his running game is not something he wants to do. In fact, he wants to elevate it, and I think he should embrace it. He should enhance it with the weapons that they have on offense and everybody back together in 2024. I'll explain more on that, what Shane Steichen said, with Anthony Richardson said on that after this break. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.